Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome along to Real Israel and our What the Israeli Papers Say show, where every week we review the news here in Israel from a variety of different news sources, and we look forward to two very well-informed and star guests joining us. Now, unfortunately, Steve Lynn, the former editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, was due to be joining us for today's show, but he's been unavoidably detained, and we hope very much he'll be with us in a couple of weeks' time. But we're very happy to say that Boaz Korpel is with us, and he'll be joining me to go through some of the big stories over the last 7 days. Now, Boaz was with us a few weeks ago, and you'll have seen what he had to say there about a number of different issues. He is one of Israel's foremost broadcasters. He's particularly well known for his work in the world of motorsport, where he has the Automotive World program on Israeli television, and he's also covered a number of different sports as well as having plenty to say on lots of other things outside of the sporting world. So, Boaz, we're delighted to have you with us. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be here once again. And of course, as you said, sports is a big business, but we are citizens, and besides of that, we have a few other opinions about what's going on here in Israel.
Well, there's always something going on, Boaz, as you know, but not here in Israel this week for our first story, because the big story, of course, across the world is the US elections. And we're drawing towards the end of the campaign. It's been an unusual campaign because of all the COVID issues. And here in Israel, people are wondering whether a new president will be a good or a bad thing for the country. Now, a number of different outlets have been reporting on it. In the Times of Israel, first of all, they report on the fears of a lot of American Jews about anti-Semitism in the Republican Party. And in a recent poll quoted in the Times of Israel, it suggests that 82% of US Jews think that anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States, and 7 out of 10 American Jews think that the Republican Party holds anti-Semitic views. On the other side, they feel that 16% of the left wing in the Democrats hold anti-Semitic views and are problematic for Jewish people. What do you think, first of all, that we have here in Israel to think about? Would it be a major issue if Donald Trump is not re-elected?
First of all, I think that this is the first time to my memory that the elections in America are so big issue, so big impact on what's going on in Israel, especially because of the pandemic, and especially because what's going on lately with all the new agreements with the countries in the Persian Gulf, and of course now with Sudan, and they speak a lot about the future countries that are going to be in relationship with us, i.e., speaking about Saudi Arabia and things like that. But speaking about that poll saying that 82% of the Jews in America thinks what they're thinking, I don't buy it, because I don't think, with all due respect to the poll, of course, but I don't think that any poll can cover such a number of 82%. I know, I see the news every day on TV and other places, and I see what's going on.
It would be 82% of those questioned, 82% of the Jewish people questioned, yes.
Of the question, okay. Yeah. Thank you for that frame, of course. But again, to be so categorically, determined about what the opinion in America is, will be very, very difficult. There is a big debate even here as well about what the Jewish in America or the Israelis that immigrate to America are thinking now. And it's a very emotional, because President Trump is, nobody can say other that he's the best president for the Israeli country, for Israel in the last 10 years. Of course, everybody is doing the paralleling between him and President Obama in the past, and what Joe Biden will bring to the table, and the opinion of the Democrat Party in America. And they say, which president is going to be good to Israel? Because this is the idea about what the Israeli people or the Jewish people in America are thinking. Is it a good president for Israel, or is it a bad president for Israel? But the real answer, or the real truth behind that, is that the Jewish vote in America, important as it be, it's not the issue now, because what's going on because of the philosophy of President Trump and Biden from the other side, it's not about the Jewish or Israel. Israel is not the main issue. They try to put it as a main issue. But what's going on in America right now, and you see and you hear about the riots in Pennsylvania last night, riots in Pennsylvania, who thought about it? I mean, Pennsylvania is one of the belt countries in America with all the industry and everything like that. This is the issue in America, and not which president will be better. Speaking about that anyway, Paul, the influence, and what influence Bibi Netanyahu can put on those Jewish people in America in order to convince them or to push them or to urge them to support President Trump and not Joe Biden. The polls in America, they say that still there is now a little bit too Biden and against Trump, and he's trying to push the community in America in order to vote for Trump, and I'm not sure that it's going to be successful so much, because what's going in America is stronger than what President Trump trying to do with Israel in order to get the support.
I accept that, but just to give a couple of other angles on this story. First of all, a lot of people in America, Jewish people, have been uncomfortable about how close Israel has been to President Trump, given how erratic many of his policies have been, and his alleged racism and things like this. And that has seen the Jewish community in America very divided, more than it's ever been before. A lot of people are uncomfortable with that. But I think Israel, is by default a defining part of the American election this year. And there's one very big reason, and that is because in order to be re-elected, Donald Trump, in my view, has to carry all the Christian evangelical vote. And many Christian evangelicals are serious supporters of the state of Israel. Now, anybody that believes that Trump has become a committed Christian and has Christian values has to make that decision for themselves. But everything in the way he behaved prior to being president, there wasn't a great deal of Christianity in a lot of what he did. And we heard the comments he made about female reporters and other things prior to the election in 2016. But for Donald Trump, Israel is essential because it is the key to him getting the evangelical vote. If he's seen to be supporting Israel, then most of that vote will come with him and give him a chance of being re-elected. And I think that because of that, Israel is a very significant issue. And whether we like it or not here in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu has hung very much onto the coattails of Trump, a leader who throughout most of the rest of the world is not held in the highest regard by the majority of countries. So Israel has been tied inextricably, I believe, to President Donald Trump, and there has been many benefits for Israel over the last 4 years. But is that at the expense of a wider picture, especially if he doesn't get re-elected?
It's a big issue, as you said, because he's an evangelist, and the vote and the voice and the weight of the evangelistic community in America, I don't know if I may say community, because there are big communities all over, not only in Utah, as you know, is very important, because it's in the core of the evangelist to support Israel. And he knows that, and he plays by the rules. And you just could heard his last telephone call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, speaking about the new, I don't know if it's peace treaty or I don't know how to call it, between Israel and Sudan. And he said,
which we'll come to in a few moments. Yeah,
Sleepy Joe couldn't arrange that for you, and Uncle Trumpy made it for you. So what do you say about it? He wanted actually to squeeze Prime Minister Netanyahu, which was very diplomatic, and he stayed dry between those drops of rain, and Donald Trump want him in his side in order to influence on the Jewish and the evangelistic community to see how good it is for Israel and to win in both areas, the Jewish and the evangelistic community. But the problem that he avoids is not the Jewish or the evangelistic, because those communities, let's call them, they are one of his strongest bases. The problem of President Trump is with the racism and the COVID-19 problems that in America right now.
Well, I'm just going to come in there. Actually, Boaz, I'm going to come in there because you mentioned COVID-19 and reporting here in Israel, the Jerusalem Post, on the subject of the U.S. elections, have pointed out with a piece written on October the 26th by Jeremy Sharon, with a headline, U.S. ultra-Orthodox rabbis lavish Trump with praise ahead of the election. And this praise is specifically because Trump has been very clear that he wants their houses of worship to stay open. He wants all religious people to see him as the person that's not closing religious centers. But the question is, while it's good to be able to have the opportunity to worship at these places, is it going to come at the cost of more lives lost? And America, already with over 225,000 people dead, is it sensible of the ultra-Orthodox rabbis to be supporting that particular policy and telling people to vote for Trump just because he's keeping the synagogues open?
It's almost, okay? It's almost like a mirror to what happened here when in the last wave or the last eruption of COVID-19 with the religious and the ultra-Orthodox cities in Israel to what's going on over there. If you saw what happened in the first eruption of COVID-19 in New York, in the neighborhoods in New York,
yes,
and how it was affected over the population over there, of the Jewish religious people over there, it was horrific. It was like zombies came out of space and killed everybody over there, and they couldn't understand. And nobody from Trump's side or the city of New York came and closed the synagogues because they want to go on and pray and pray and pray. And as we spoke the last time, I still remember that they have their own philosophy and they trust on God, and I respect that from their point of view, that they will save them. And if Trump allowed them to go and pray to God in the synagogues, then he's the man. But when they count, and sorry about that, but I have to be a little bit, at the end of the day, when they count the dead people, you saw what's happened in those neighborhoods in New York. There were hundreds of them,
yes,
of them, and nobody
yes,
could save them, not even Trump. So
I think
they use each other.
I think that's true. And
mutual interest, they use each other.
as we touched on in a previous edition of What the Israeli Papers Say, it was very interesting to hear the head of Zaka, the Haredi head of Zaka, the ambulance service for the Haredi, pointing out that the number of dead people they were having to deal with here in Israel was absolutely unprecedented. And it's open to a great deal of question whether or not the idea of keeping synagogues and other places of worship open is going to come at the expense of lives of people that are going to potentially be voting for Trump. But also, on the other side of the argument...
Just for a second, look what happened now in the second wave, okay? Why we are so
Yes.
successful again. It's not that there wasn't any problems with the Arab population, with all the marriages here, in thousands of them, and people getting contagious day after day, and the numbers raised to 9,000 people per day, compared to a country small as in Israel. As Israel, it's a huge number. And also
Yes.
in the Orthodox religious people, it was the same. But then the police came. And when the police came, and they came strong and tried to enforce it, even if they didn't succeed, but they had the influence about the people to stay at home, then we control it again. But other problems are raised because of the economic and things like that. But regarding the COVID-19, we managed to block it.
At the moment, it seems to be under control while we're easing up, which we'll come to in a few moments. But on the other side of the coin, while the ultra-Orthodox rabbis in America have been calling for supporting Trump, the Jerusalem Post also, in a story by Shira Hanua, has mentioned that a leading Israeli modern Orthodox rabbi has condemned Trump. This is Moshe Lichtenstein, who is head of the Yeshivat Haaretz Zion in the West Bank. And he's questioned Trump's mental and moral fitness. And what he said And I quote the rabbi from the West Bank here in Israel. He said of Trump, "This is a mentally disturbed person without any inhibition or judgment, who controls the button of the most powerful nuclear weapons in the world, and here people applaud him for opening an embassy in Israel. They don't stop for a moment to think about the moral damage that he inflicts on the United States or even on the world. They don't ask how it's possible to abandon the fate of humanity to such an unbalanced man who doesn't recognize the concepts of truth and falsehood." Now, that's a very damning statement from an Israeli Orthodox rabbi on the other side of the coin. So there are two sides to this story with different views within the Jewish religious world.
As you see, as you saw before, and as you can see now, I'm moving inconveniently in my chair, hearing those words of this rabbi. Okay, he said it's an opinion, and everybody can say his own opinion. It's a free word, no problem with that whatsoever. I don't know what are the tools that this rabbi have in order to judge and to say that Trump is what he said. But let's speak about facts, okay? Because in a world like that, only facts is what we can see, and we can judge by facts at the end of the day. No, by
you say to judge by facts, but of course, President Trump has changed what a fact is. He refers to alternative facts very often these days. So finding the truth in a lot of these arguments, particularly where the current president is concerned, is sometimes
it's another debate about it. And it's another debate between you, me, and the rest of the world about what fake news is or not.
Exactly.
And of course, you can see each and every opinion in different ways. And with speaking about Jews, every Jew in the world have 4 opinions by himself. So it's a big debate.
But just before we go down that path, we're talking about the Jews, but I want to talk about the Arabs, and I want to talk about a story that's related to this in Yediot Achronot, ynet.co.il, because they have published a piece based on the British poll of YouGov of Arab people in the Middle East that says that most Arabs favor Biden over Trump in the US election. Now, we've spoken a lot about Trump, but not that much about Biden, who, of course, together with Barack Obama, was 8 years involved in running the United States, and obviously there was a lot of issues to do with Israel, including the Iran nuclear agreement, which was very controversial. Let's say that Biden wins, for argument's sake. Is it going to change the landscape very much here, or is Biden going to be a fairly safe pair of hands, do you think?
First of all, there's going to be a change. There will be a change. Second, what will be the measure of the change? President Trump is not 100%, is 200% pushing to our point of view. If you are from the government side now, and the Palestinians, they feel that, especially now, that's what's going on, all the deals behind closed doors with those Persian Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia and other things. The Palestinian issue is not an issue anymore if you see what and if you judge what he's doing now, because they say we can solve our lives, we can make them better, and leave the Palestinian issue in the side and try to fix it later or in other way. We don't want to block our lives and to continue with our lives and prosperity and everything else, and now even fighting COVID-19. And because of the Palestinian issue, it's not a holy grail anymore. Okay, let's put it in the side. What President Biden, if he will be elected as a president, will bring back to the table probably will be the Palestinian issue in order to solve the problem in other way. To tell you that I think, or what I read and what I see, he will do it the Obama way, I don't think so, because President Obama failed in every field he wanted to change the situation. With us, with them, with the Arab countries, with Egypt, with everything he tried, I believe he came with good spirit in order to really solve the problem, to change the things. But he so misunderstood the whole situation, and it doesn't matter who tried to explain the situation, us or them or people or even aliens. It was misunderstood whatsoever with what's going on over here. So this is the reason why he failed. I believe that if Biden is going to be elected as the president, he will read the map better and will learn from the mistakes of President Obama and will try to solve the problem in a different way. And with that, we have to be assured, and we have to know that if the United States signed on agreements, then he will have to respect all the agreements that President Trump signed.
Okay. Well, I think that's fair enough. I mean, I do agree with you that for all his supposed good intentions, President Obama was pretty disastrous for this region because he misread the whole Arab mindset. He sparked off all sorts of movements with his speech at the Cairo University that led to the Arab Spring. That was the key, and that will only prove disastrous for so many people in the Arab world, as we know. Also, his inaction over Syria when the red line was crossed and he refused to act. So let's hope that if Joe Biden is elected president, Boaz, that he, as you quite rightly say, learns from the mistakes, as we see in this region, of the Obama administration. But I'm just going to move on. But I want to just move on to very quickly. A story popped up this morning, which really did catch my eye, because, of course, and related to this issue of the Trump administration, its support of Israel, one of the big things that Trump has trumpeted is the fact that he was the guy that moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, which indeed he did. It had been promised by many presidents, but it was Trump that actually did it. Now, the Israeli government, in a deal with the Trump administration, provided land in Jerusalem for a new American embassy to be constructed. That was constructed, and in return, the U.S. were meant to give the embassy on Hayarkon Street in Tel Aviv, which you know very well, back to the state of Israel. But it's reported this morning, excuse me, by Gil Hoffman in the Jerusalem Post once again, that America is refusing to give the embassy back to the state of Israel, which is very strange. Now, why would they refuse to do that? They're on the main strip where all the big hotels are located in Tel Aviv. Anybody that knows the beachfront, there's all the big fancy hotels there. Why would they renege on the deal and not give it back? People, some might say that maybe they want to put it out to a sort of tender or something, and maybe some great hotel organization might want to take it over and create a beachfront hotel. And who knows, there is a certain person currently occupying the White House that is rather influential in the hotel and hospitality world. This is a very strange situation for two countries that are meant to be working hand in glove.
It's a strange situation, as you said, and I believe it will be solved. I don't know how, in which way, but I believe it will be solved in a quick talk between the two top heads, between Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump, and they will let people solve the issue. Behind that, you just gave a small hint, and you didn't say it out front. The piece of land, which is the American embassy is sitting now in Tel Aviv, or used to be in Tel Aviv, it's worth millions and millions and millions of US dollars. It doesn't matter if the embassy will stay there or not. The piece of land on the beach, on Hayarkon Street, the potential to do something commercial over there is huge. And of course, it opens a big fight between the sides who will be the owner of this piece of land. If the government of Israel will have this piece of land, because up to now, this piece of land, if I'm not wrong, belong to the state of the America, like every other embassy in the world. Every embassy that open its embassy offices, it doesn't matter in which country,
it is their sovereign territory. Yes,
exactly. Yes. This is sovereign area of this.
The point is, Boaz, that of course the agreement was reached that the land in Tel Aviv will be given back to Israel, because Israel was giving land in Jerusalem to America to move their embassy. So I'm going to have to move on, because I can see that the clock is ticking by.
One thing about that. I just want to say one thing about that. Me, you, and anybody else, most of the people in the world, we didn't saw what's written in the contract. You just say that it will be
That's a very good point.
crisscross between the pieces of land, but we never saw what we don't know what's in the contract as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's just based on the news reports we've seen, but you're absolutely right. We haven't seen the devil is in the detail.
That I'm not in the contract me myself, to get a piece of that land.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to just go through a few more stories because there's been so much to look at. And of course, since last we spoke, there has been a peace deal announced, as we've noted a couple of times, with Sudan. And these stories have been reported with all the media, the Jerusalem Post, reporting the fact that it's the third Arab state in the last few weeks to announce ties with Israel. There was a very interesting piece at the BESA website, which is the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies, and that was by Haim Koren, where he basically gave an overview of the history between Israel and Sudan. It's a history that he puts forward that contradicts a lot of the history books, I have to say, because he says that Sudan had very positive relations with the new state of Israel and through to the time of Golda Meir, but he seems to have conveniently forgotten that there were 6 Sudanese units that joined the Egyptians fighting in 1948 against the state of Israel. So there has been quite a complicated history between the two countries. And of course, Sudan in recent years has been working quite closely with Iran. And there was the bombing by Israel of a munitions factory near Khartoum in 2012, which was making missiles for Iran that were being shipped to Lebanon and also into Gaza. So Sudan has for quite some years been a conduit for weapons coming through from Iran to the enemies of Israel to put Israel under pressure, both from the west in the Gaza and in the north from Lebanon. So, Boaz, just in brief, the situation with Sudan being welcomed into the Friends of Israel Club now, on the face of it, looks a positive move. It could really change the lie of the land.
Sudan is the issue of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and what you didn't say, in your review is another good thing that happened with Sudan. Sudan, I don't know if they helped or didn't help, but they didn't interrupt in all the procedure of making Aliyah for a lot of Jewish people from Ethiopia, because they have a border with Ethiopia, and the position of Sudan in Africa is very important as a country as well. So when we arrange all the big campaign of bringing the Jewish people from Ethiopia to Israel, Sudan, I don't know if they help, but they didn't interrupt. So this is, again, in the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Don't forget that Mr. Trump, President Trump, arranged that deal together with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, and everybody here in Israel is happy to have another agreement with another Arab country. But Sudan, they are far away from here. The influence of Sudan on the Arab countries as Arab countries is not so important as it was 60 or 70 years ago, when they sent the troops here to Israel to fight against us in order not to allow us to establish the country in 48. So it's a different Sudan, and don't forget that they paid $350 million compensation to the families of the Americans that, what happened in the terror attacks.
But Boaz, that's just the point. They've paid the $350 million because they have been a state sponsor of terrorism. This is a country that has been renegade.
It's a deal. Are we safe?
Yeah, are we safe?
Is that $350 million is the price of this peace treaty? Is that the price? Time will tell. I don't believe so. Time will tell. And I don't see the streets of Tel Aviv washed with Sudanese, and also I don't see the streets of Khartoum washed with Israelis, because we have nothing to look over there, and they have nothing to look over here, except of asking all the people, all the refugees that came here from southern Sudan to go back to the country without any harm.
Okay, well, that's just the final point. I'll just make this point about that. You bring it up. People may not know around the world that there are quite a number of Sudanese refugees in Israel. They've come through crossing the Sinai. They've come through, and many of them are refugees who have been threatened by the regime there in Sudan, and they've fled for their lives. Now, There's been a lot of debate whether they should have come to Israel, because you meant to go to the first safe place, and they crossed through Egypt, and in some cases circular routes via Libya and all sorts of things. But the guy in charge of Sudan these days is a man who has a very patchy record on human rights and was supposedly involved in instructing a massacre of people only a year or two ago. So a lot of these people in Israel, the Sudanese refugees who've been given humanitarian right to stay, are fearful that if they go back, they may walk back into something very, very difficult. And that is something that has to be investigated very thoroughly before we send them back, because we can't be seen to be sending people back to a potential death situation in Sudan.
But they gave them a certain of guarantee that when they will go back, no harm will happen. And
I would assume that guarantee is going to be held.
Israel is involved in so many things. I don't see an interest of Israel in Sudan except of commercial interest, and that's it. There is no Jewish community over there to save them or to preserve them. There is nothing to do in Sudan for us. If I offer you a trip to Sudan, you can do it.
I think we have to look at the bigger picture, if I may, and just disagree there, because having reported on intelligence matters and terrorism, one thing is very clear, that Sudan has been used as a corridor for weapons transfers to weapons auctions in the Sinai Desert, including weapons coming from the Libyan failed state since Gaddafi collapsed. And Sudan has been very much turning a blind eye to this. Now, for Israel's security, this is quite a big step, because if indeed Sudan does fall into line and play by the rules of the game, it's going to block off a major highway of weapons transportation from the Persian Gulf through from Iran. And it's going to be a big blow from Iran and the Yemenite conflict as well.
I agree with that. But for me as a citizen, and for you as a citizen of Israel, you don't look at the map and say to your wife, I think this winter we'll go to Sudan. This is not a peace. This is another point in the world that you can put your spies over there in order to protect your country. I believe in that, and you're right. But we had a great success before. So why to have a peace agreement with them? I'm not against the peace agreement. I am for it, 100%, 200%. But it's like, it's like to have a peace agreement with people in the moon. Let's do it, and maybe we'll have a point in the moon.
I think so. I think maybe a little simplistic there with respect, Boaz, because I think that Benjamin Netanyahu will have been pleased with this deal, because I think the security establishment feel it strengthens the fight against the weapons traffickers from that part of the world. But we're going to have to move on. Yeah, we're going to have to move on.
Just the last thing about it. I agree. I'm happy. I'm happy to each and every country in the world to have a relationship with Israel. The normality, it's good and nothing but good. But
Absolutely.
To see and to look at the interest, it's more interest of security and things like that, and commercial, and nothing but that.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that being ratified and all going forward, and there may well be other nations coming forward, which is also going to be good.
Saudi Arabia can be good, and by the way, we will lose Armenia because we support Azerbaijan now with weapons, with their fight against Armenia in Nagorno-Karabakh area, and already the Armenians are threatening us. You see, if you have quiet in one area of the world, we're making business and doing troubles in other areas in the world.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But on the back of that, just very quickly, I want to go to a story about Hadassah Hospital. Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem is, of course, one of the great hospitals of Israel. It's also one of the great medical research centers, not just in Israel, but across the world. But one very important point to bring out about Hadassah Hospital is that they've been in financial trouble for a very long time. They've been on the point almost of closure. A lot of research projects have either been stopped or permanently or temporarily because lack of funds. Now, the Globe's newspaper, which is a financial online newspaper, very, very serious in Israel, points out that Hadassah Hospital is in talk to set up a hospital in Dubai, and that has all transpired since the peace agreement with the UAE. Now, this is a very interesting point because obviously Dubai has a huge amount of money to spend, and what they're looking to do is set up a branch of Hadassah and bring over to Dubai 1,000 doctors and nurses. And the head of Hadassah, this is Professor Zev Rothstein, has started initial negotiations on this. Now, on the face of it, it's another very good corridor for cooperation between Israel and the UAE.
Exactly.
How do you feel about this? Is this a wholly positive situation?
First of all, it's a very positive and good news about Hadassah. Hadassah, you know what's happened in Israel. If people that see us doesn't know what's happening in Israel in the last 15 or 20 years regarding the health system, and I'm not speaking about COVID, okay? Health system was so developed but so expensive because of the development of the technology. So a new branch of tourism opened in Israel, and it's called health tourism. People who came to Israel from a lot of countries in the world in order to be hospitalized here and getting the treatment with all the good knowledge and all the good technology that we have here, the expensive one that common people like me and you, and speaking about me, I don't know about you because you're rich, cannot get it. Okay? So now, Hadassah and Abu Dhabi or Dubai is not the only place, because you can find Hadassah in Africa and other places. They're going and they have a business development department in the hospital in order to promote, in order to have to open other places under the name of Hadassah, because it's a world good name, and to do good business. Why not? Why not? Why agriculture, yes, and why in technology, yes, and why not with medicine and health? Let them do it. It's good.
Well, I think on the face of it, it sounds very, very promising. There is one point that I think needs to be considered, and I'll just mention this very briefly, because the health services in Israel are under a great deal of strain. They're short of money. We haven't had a proper budget passed in this country for over a year, so the country is in all sorts of problems with health and education and other things. But as far as Hadassah goes, like so many other hospitals, they have very severe financial issues, including with staff and being able to support staff with the right financial packages. And my fear just would be, wonderful as it would be to have another branch of Hadassah in Dubai, if they're taking 1,000 doctors and nurses away to Dubai, where they're already said they're prepared to build them homes and provide them with very high salaries, this could, on the other side of the coin, weaken the service that is being given to people in the Jerusalem area, where already, such as Shaarei Tzedek and Hadassah and one or two other hospitals, are under a great deal of financial pressure and also shortages of staff. So I think it's great that there is this potential partnership with Dubai, but I hope it doesn't come at the expense of Israeli citizens having to wait longer for operations and not being able to get into a bed. So I just think that's a point worth bearing in mind. It's a story that's reported in Globes and also in the Jerusalem Post.
I see it. I see it from the opposite way. It will make room for new staff to come inside all the universities, that doctors, nurses, and other people from the health system and on medicine studies can come and find new jobs and new places to work. And don't say that they will ship to Abu Dhabi, the old guys like the Eskimos are doing, but and they leave us only with you know what. But it will make new frontiers, and it will bring a new horizon for the profession of health and doctors and things like that. Be a good doctor, and you can make a lot of money. Not even here, just not here, but even there.
Well, we'll wait and see. I'm going to watch this one very closely. It's a place that's very absolutely. It's a hospital that's very dear to my heart. It's a marvelous organisation. Now, we've almost run out of time, but I just wanted to come to one very brief story just to wrap up with, Boaz, because you are Israel's premier motor sports journalist and broadcaster, and there was a major happening at the weekend, wasn't there, with Lewis Hamilton breaking the all-time record of the highest number of Grand Prix wins, and I know you'll have been following that and covering it. But for people out there that aren't aware that there is any connection in Israel to motorsport, I just want you to put in the picture one or two names of people that maybe the international community should be looking out from Israel as possibly stars of the future for international motorsport in the shoes of Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the shoes of Lewis Hamilton because he's a great champion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's about to be, I believe he's going to give a knighthood by the Queen at the end of the year because he deserves the knighthood. But you would not expect never in your life from a country of Israel to bring motorsport athletes and to succeed in such a world level or European level. But it's happening. It's happening. Roy Nissany, it's a familiar name. He already conducted 2 tests in Williams Grand Prix, the British team, and he's made a great job in Spain and in Italy. And it's going to do another one where in Abu Dhabi in the end of the year, connected with last conversation. Yes. And also Alon Day from Ashdod, the 25-year-old guy, very successful. He had a good time in single-seater cars, but now he's a 2-time champion in European NASCAR Championship. It's one of the championship. It's coming from NASCAR. It's America, but it's doing good in Europe, and it's developed. And Alon is a 2-time champion, and now he's leading the championship in 2020. Another newcomer, 19-year-old guy from Ramat Gan named Ido Cohen, 2-time podiumist in Belgium, in Spa, the legendary circuit in the Euro Formula Championship.
Wow.
It's not the FIA, but is an uprising name. As we speak, not a driver, but a motorcycle rider named Suf Sela is actually right now in Romania in one of the hardest challenges of off-road riding in the world, the Romaniacs Challenge, and he's one of the top 25 in the world. And we can speak a lot about other drivers. Barbarouk from Carmiel, he was number 3 in the Italian GT Championship. 12 young drivers, boys and girls, are now in Greece in order to compete for 2 tickets in World Championship for go-karts in the end of the season. Ariel Elkin, 12-year-old boy from the north near Haifa, took the first place in the karting championship 2-3 weeks ago. So the next one will be in motorsports.
It would be amazing to see Israel doing well in what is a truly international world sport. And Boaz,
without heritage, without nothing.
Absolutely, we don't even have a proper racetrack here. But I want to thank you, Boaz, for your time and for your insight in all the matters that we've covered. Obviously, we wish Steve well, and we're looking forward to seeing him back in a couple of weeks to join us. But for now, from this, what the Israeli papers say, and ahead of our next one, which will come after the American election, I'll say a very good afternoon and look forward to everybody joining us again next time. And don't forget to press the red subscribe button on the YouTube channel to keep in touch with all our new releases. But Boaz, thanks very much. We'll be with you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you very much. The red button is the right button. Thank you.